Ladies and gentlemen, there is something mysterious, something sacred about the nighttime. It's when the body rests, the mind quiets, and the spirit becomes most open to the whispers of heaven. It's no coincidence that so many of the most life-altering encounters with God recorded in Scripture happened at night. When Jacob laid his head upon a stone and fell into a dream so vivid, he saw angels ascending and descending a heavenly ladder. When Samuel, just a boy, heard the voice of the Lord for the first time, it was not in the middle of a crowded room. It was in the quiet hush of the night as he lay down to sleep. You see, we often think of the day as the time of healing, the time of movement and action, the time to fight the battle. But what if I told you that some of the most powerful healings don't take place when you're standing, but when you're still? What if I told you that what you do before you sleep, in those quiet moments when no one else is watching, can activate a divine flow of healing that medicine cannot explain, that science can only begin to scratch the surface of, and that your body has been crying out for? Tonight I want to invite you into that secret place, into a rhythm of surrender, a posture of belief, and a connection to the living God that will transform your body, renew your mind, and restore your soul while you sleep. I am not speaking to you tonight from theory alone. I speak to you as one who has studied healing, not just from the Scriptures, but from the lens of neuroscience, biology, and decades of walking with those who have been healed when there was no hope left. I've seen people healed of diseases that had no name. I've watched as hearts were made new, both the physical and the emotional. I've seen tumors disappear, bones realign, chronic pain vanish like smoke on a windy day. And often the healing didn't happen under bright hospital lights or in the middle of a revival service. It happened at night, quietly, when the body slept, when the spirit yielded. Let me tell you about something that might surprise you. The human body in its sleeping state enters what scientists call deep restorative processes. The immune system activates, cells regenerate, hormones that heal and repair, like melatonin and human growth hormone, are released in abundance. But here's where it gets interesting. Studies have shown that the emotional and spiritual state of a person before they fall asleep drastically affects what happens in their body while they sleep. In fact, some of the most respected peer-reviewed journals in medicine have documented how stress, bitterness, anxiety, and fear can block the release of those very healing chemicals. But peace, gratitude, worship, and hope, they accelerate them. One of the most powerful studies ever done on this phenomenon was conducted by a group of neuropsychologists in Zurich. They studied individuals who were trained to meditate on peace and forgiveness before bed, compared to those who replayed stress or unresolved conflict in their minds. The group that practiced peace not only slept deeper, they showed measurable increases in immune markers and reported lower pain levels. Their bodies literally began to heal in their sleep. Why? Because the body was designed to align with God's rhythms. Psalm 127 says he gives his beloved sleep. But the Hebrew word used there is not just referring to physical sleep. It's a picture of rest that is bestowed, a kind of rest that brings repair, restoration, and wholeness. And when your heart is in tune with God before you close your eyes, the Spirit of God doesn't go to sleep. He gets to work. I remember a woman who came to me after years of battling an autoimmune condition. She had been to every specialist, tried every experimental drug, eaten every clean food, but nothing changed. Her nights were full of pain and torment. She told me she hadn't slept a full night in over 6 years. But the more I talked with her, the more I realized something. Her body was tired, but her soul was even more tired. wounded, angry at God and angry at herself, holding on to pain from her past that was still screaming in her bloodstream every night. I told her gently, tonight before you sleep, don't pray for healing. Don't beg God. Don't strive. Just forgive. Forgive the people who hurt you. Forgive yourself. And let your heart yield to the Holy Spirit. Just tell him, I give you permission to heal me tonight. She did it. No lightning bolts, no visions of angels, just a quiet moment before bed where she let go and said, heal me, Lord, while I sleep. And that night she slept the whole night through for the first time in 6 years. When she woke up, the swelling in her joints had subsided, the brain fog was gone, her skin, which had been inflamed for years, was visibly healing. It wasn't the sleep that healed her, it was what she did before she slept. And friends, what she did, you can do tonight. I want you to understand something powerful about how God designed your brain. There is a place in your brain called the hippocampus. It processes memory, stores emotional pain, and helps regulate how your body responds to stress. When you replay trauma or worry before sleep, the hippocampus literally floods your body with cortisol, keeping your nervous system in a state of alertness. That means your body can't repair itself. But when you meditate on peace, when you repeat God's promises out loud, when you surrender to His Word, your brain begins to release oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins, all of which are directly tied to immune repair, inflammation reduction, and the growth of new neural pathways. Don't miss this. Science confirms what Scripture already told us. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. That wasn't poetic language, that was spiritual and biological truth. Peace heals. Worship heals. Surrender heals. And when you enter sleep in the presence of the great physician, healing begins before your eyes even close. Some of the most powerful moments I've ever had with God weren't while shouting on a stage. They were when I laid still at night, whispered a verse, and allowed the Holy Spirit to hover over my bed like He hovered over the waters at creation. And as I drifted off into sleep, I could feel healing moving through places I didn't even know were broken. Now someone might say, but I've tried praying before bed. I've said the words and I still wake up in pain. Friend, listen to me. It's not about saying the right words. It's about opening the right door. You see, God doesn't respond to formulas. He responds to faith. And faith is not always loud. Sometimes faith is simply turning off your phone, turning off the worry, placing your hand on your chest and whispering, Lord, I receive your healing tonight. Not because I earned it, but because you promised it. We think miracles always have to come with fireworks, but often they come in whispers. In the book of Job, it says that God speaks once, yea, twice, in dreams, in visions of the night when deep sleep falls on men. Could it be that the thing you've been crying out for, breakthrough, healing, clarity, freedom, is waiting on the other side of tonight's sleep? But only if you enter that sleep aligned with His Spirit. I feel this deeply tonight. Someone listening to me has been praying for healing for a very long time, but you've been carrying that prayer like a burden instead of laying it down like a gift. And tonight God is saying, let me take it. Trust me. Don't carry it into your dreams. Place it in my hands before you sleep. And when you do, your body will shift. Your spirit will rest. Your healing will begin. Let me tell you another story. A young man diagnosed with stage 4 lymphoma came to one of our meetings. He looked gaunt, hopeless, his eyes dim. The doctors had done all they could. Chemo had been tried. Nothing worked. But when he came forward, he didn't ask for hands to be laid on him. He didn't weep or wail. He just said, I want to sleep in peace tonight. That night something remarkable happened. He took Psalm 91 and read it out loud 3 times before bed. He placed his hand on his chest and simply said, Lord, heal every cell in my sleep. His body had been resistant to treatment for over a year, but in the next 7 days, his blood markers began to improve. Within 3 weeks, the doctors could no longer find active cancer. They were stunned, but he wasn't. He said, I knew God healed me when I finally rested in him. That was the first night. I didn't fight for my healing. I received it. And that, friends, is the secret the world doesn't talk about. We are taught to fight, to strive, to earn, to do more. But the kingdom of God teaches us something completely different. Be still and know that I am God. Healing often comes not in the pushing, but in the stillness. Not in the battle, but in the surrender. There's a rhythm to divine healing, one that matches the way your body was created. Your body has cycles, circadian rhythms, ultradian rhythms, the deep phases of sleep that rotate through the night. When you align your spirit with the Holy Spirit, your body falls into the cadence of heaven's song. And that's when things begin to change. A neuroscientist once told me something fascinating. He said the body is most susceptible to belief in the 5 minutes before sleep and the first 5 minutes after waking up. That's when the subconscious is most open. I couldn't help but think of Deuteronomy 6, where God instructed his people to speak his words when you lie down and when you rise up. Thousands of years before we had brain scans or scientific journals, God already knew what you say, what you meditate on, what you allow into your soul in those sacred windows. That is what shapes your health, your mind, your life. So I want to ask you, what have you been feeding your soul before bed? Have you been rehearsing the pain, replaying the trauma, feeding the fear, or have you been preparing the soil for healing? What you do before you sleep is not a throwaway moment. It's the sacred doorway between your soul and the realm of miracles. If you go to bed speaking doubt, it will echo through your nervous system all night. But if you go to bed speaking faith, that faith begins to construct new pathways in your brain, new expectations in your body, and new outcomes in your cells. Faith is not just spiritual. Faith is biological. It transforms the body because it rewrites how your brain sees reality. I've worked with individuals facing terminal diagnoses who experience what doctors call spontaneous remission. You know what they all had in common? They changed their inner narrative. They began to speak life instead of death. They surrendered instead of striving, and many of them did something powerful. They created a nightly ritual of worship and surrender before bed. I remember one man with advanced Parkinson's who said he began to lay his hands on his head every night and say, Lord, rewire my brain while I sleep. And you know what? Within weeks, his tremors decreased. He began to walk more steadily. His sleep, which had been broken for years, became restful again. I'm not telling you this to sell you a miracle. I'm telling you this because the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead dwells in you. And if he raised Jesus, he can quicken your mortal body. That's not an idea. That's Scripture. That's the promise. But it requires a yielding, a willingness to do what most people won't, to believe that doing less, when done in faith, can bring greater results. Now, I'm going to tell you something that may sound strange, but it's backed by both Scripture and science. Worship and healing are deeply connected, not just in theory, but in brain chemistry. Worship activates areas of the brain associated with trust, peace, and joy. It lowers cortisol, increases dopamine, and even improves heart rate variability, a key marker of healing and nervous system balance. When you go to bed worshiping, you're not just honoring God, you're healing your brain, you're preparing your body to receive divine instruction, you're softening the soil for miracles to be planted. Some of you may be saying, but I don't feel anything when I pray. That's okay. Healing is not based on feeling. It's based on truth. If a farmer plants a seed, he doesn't see a sprout overnight, but he trusts the process. And when you speak God's promises over your body before bed, you are planting divine seed into the fertile ground of your rest. It may start small, but healing always grows when the soil stays surrendered. I want to challenge you tonight. Make a decision that before your head hits the pillow, you will take just 5 minutes. 5 sacred minutes to speak life, to speak scripture, to speak healing, to thank God, not because you feel better yet, but because you trust Him to work while you sleep. Turn off the noise, shut down the chaos, and say, Lord, I give you this night. I give you access to my body, my mind, my cells, my heart. Heal what I cannot see. Heal what I don't even know is broken. When you do that, something happens. You begin to come into agreement with heaven. Your spirit, which is already joined with Christ, begins to send signals to your body, and little by little, sometimes instantly, sometimes progressively, healing begins to flow. One of the most beautiful stories I ever heard was of a woman in her 70s with severe arthritis. She could barely walk, and every night she cried herself to sleep from the pain. One night, instead of crying, she decided to sing. She sang an old hymn, "Great is thy faithfulness," through her tears. Then she whispered, "Lord, I trust you to work while I sleep." That night, she dreamt of Jesus placing his hand on her knees. When she woke up, the pain was gone. Completely gone. The swelling, the stiffness, it was as if the condition had never existed. Her doctor was baffled. Her family was in awe. But she simply smiled and said, "God healed me while I rested." Faith like that is not complicated. It's childlike. And that's what God honors. Now let's get practical, because I know someone here is hungry for the how. Here's what I want you to do tonight and every night for the next 7 days. Before you sleep, find a quiet space. Turn off distractions. Place your hand on your heart or wherever you're experiencing pain. Speak these words out loud. Lord, I receive your healing. My body belongs to you. Heal me in my sleep. I surrender this night to you. Then read a healing scripture. Psalm 103 is a good one. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgives all your iniquities, who heals all your diseases. You may feel something. You may feel nothing. But faith isn't about the moment. It's about trust. And healing, my friends, is already flowing the moment you say, "Yes, Lord, I receive." Some of you will wake up with pain gone. Others will feel peace you haven't known in years. And some of you will begin a process of renewal that transforms not just your health, but your very identity. Because healing is not just about the removal of sickness. It's about the restoration of your wholeness, of your destiny, of your voice. And sometimes that restoration begins with just one whispered prayer in the dark. Lord, touch me while I sleep. Tonight, God is inviting you into that kind of trust, that kind of surrender. He is ready. The angels are ready. Your body is ready. Are you? You've tried everything else. You've run the tests, taken the pills, read the books. But healing is not just a medical event. It is a spiritual encounter. It is the Spirit of God breathing new life into dry bones. It is Jesus still speaking to the storm inside your body, saying, "Peace, be still." So tonight, do this before you sleep. Not as a ritual, not as a last-ditch effort, but as a holy offering. Surrender your body, speak His promises, invite Him in, and watch what happens. Because when you sleep and surrender, heaven moves in silence. The healer walks through the corridors of your cells. Angels are dispatched. Restoration begins. And when you rise in the morning, don't be surprised if you find that something has shifted. Not because you earned it, not because you prayed perfectly, but because you trusted the one who never sleeps, the one who never slumbers, the one who knit you together in your mother's womb and is still knitting you whole even now. So lay down in peace, beloved. God is with you. And tonight, while you rest, He will heal.
Why do some people stay sick even after years of praying with all their heart? It's the question nobody wants to ask out loud because it feels wrong, like doubting, like betrayal. But deep inside, the question still echoes, quietly. Ladies and gentlemen, painfully, you've seen it, good people, people with strong faith, people who pray every single day, still suffering, still waiting, still hoping for healing that never seems to come. And maybe you're one of them. Maybe you've been crying out to God, begging for relief, doing everything you know to do, and still the pain lingers. The illness stays. The struggle continues. And somewhere deep inside, you wonder if you're the problem. But you're not alone, and you're not broken. There's a truth you need to hear today. One that has the power to shift everything. Healing isn't about saying the right words in the right way at the right time. It's not a formula. It's not performance-based. And it's not about earning a miracle through effort. It's about alignment. Real, full alignment between your body, your mind, your heart, and your spirit. Because true healing, lasting, transformative healing, doesn't just touch the surface. It reaches into every layer of your life. This is why some people stay sick even after praying, not because God is ignoring them, not because their faith is weak, but because something is out of alignment, not just spiritually, but emotionally, mentally, physically. And if we're brave enough to face that, not with shame, but with hunger for truth, we open the door for something deeper than temporary relief. We open the door to real transformation. Healing doesn't always come in the way we expect. Sometimes it comes through sudden breakthrough. Other times it comes step by step, layer by layer, truth by truth. And sometimes before the body is healed, the heart must be restored. The mind must be renewed. The soul must be set free from the weight it's been carrying for years. The prayers aren't wasted. The faith hasn't failed. But maybe, just maybe, the healing you're seeking is waiting on something more than words. It's waiting on surrender, on letting go hidden pain, of bitterness, of fear, of habits that sabotage what you're praying for. This message is not about guilt. It's about hope, because if your healing depended on how hard you prayed, many of you would already be whole. But it doesn't. It depends on something higher. Alignment with truth, with love, with wholeness. That's what unlocks the breakthrough. And once you understand that, everything changes. So don't turn away. Don't give up. Stay with this. Because by the time you reach the end, you'll understand why some people stay sick and how you can walk the path toward healing with boldness, clarity, and unshakable faith. You'll see what's been missing. And you'll discover the freedom that's been waiting for you all along. Healing isn't far. It's closer than you think. You've been taught to pray. You've been told to believe. And you've done both over and over again. But if belief was just about saying the right things, many would be healed already. Faith isn't just in your words. It's in your wiring. It's not about how loud you pray, but how deeply your thoughts and emotions align with what you say. You can speak healing every day and still expect sickness in your heart. You can declare strength and still be ruled by fear. That's not weakness. That's the human condition, and it's exactly why so many people stay stuck in a cycle of hope and disappointment, because what they believe consciously is being sabotaged by what they expect subconsciously. The mind is powerful. Every thought sends signals. Signals that affect your body, your energy, even your immune system. You can't separate spiritual faith from mental focus. They work together. If you've been praying for healing, but rehearsing worst case scenarios in your mind, your body feels that. If you declare life but dwell in fear of death, your nervous system stays in survival mode. And when your nervous system is locked in fear, healing is delayed. The body can't thrive when the mind is trapped. Faith is not pretending. It's not ignoring the facts. It's choosing to believe in something higher than the facts. But belief has to live deeper than the lips. It must take root in your imagination, your self-talk, your inner dialogue. What do you expect when you wake up? What do you see when you picture your future? Do you visualize health or more struggle? Do you brace for pain or do you expect progress? This is the moment to get honest, not to shame yourself, but to set yourself free. Because until you align your inner world with your spoken faith, you will live in conflict. You'll say one thing and feel another. You'll ask for healing, but emotionally prepare for more pain. And that silent expectation can be the very thing keeping your miracle at arm's length. Healing starts in the heart, but it grows in the mind, and your mind needs new patterns, new thoughts, new images, new expectations. You don't have to fake it. You have to retrain it. Speak the truth until your mind believes it. Imagine health until your body follows it. Expect breakthrough until your spirit catches fire again. You were never meant to live in constant fear, doubt, or mental exhaustion. That's not faith. It's fatigue. But you can rise. You can shift. You can rewire your belief from the inside out. And when your faith is no longer just a hope, but a deep-rooted expectation, things begin to move. Not because you forced it, but because you finally aligned. This isn't magic. It's motion. And it begins with your thoughts. Healing isn't just something you wait for. It's something you align with. Starting now, starting within. What you hold in your heart can either heal you or hold you hostage. You can speak health, believe for it, even visualize it. But if your heart is carrying old wounds, silent anger, or buried bitterness, your healing may be delayed. Not because you're being punished, but because your heart is still closed. Healing flows through open places, not hardened ones. And it's often the pain we refuse to release that quietly blocks the answer we've been crying out for. You cannot walk in freedom while chained to resentment. You cannot receive wholeness while clinging to fragments of the past. Unforgiveness isn't weakness. It's a weight, one you were never meant to carry. Yet many carry it anyway, sometimes for years, sometimes for decades, against a parent, a friend, a partner, a stranger, even against themselves. And that pain becomes the filter through which they see life, faith, and even healing. Bitterness doesn't just poison relationships. It poisons the body. It creates stress, tension, dis-ease. The mind replays the offense, the heart holds onto the memory, and the body responds with inflammation, fatigue, illness. You may not realize it, but what you haven't released emotionally is still speaking physically. It's still affecting your energy, your sleep, your clarity, your immune system. Forgiveness isn't just a spiritual act. It's a healing one. It's not about excusing the wrong. It's about choosing to stop bleeding from it. You were never designed to live in cycles of silent pain. You were made to rise, to let go, to be free. And forgiveness is the key that unlocks that freedom, not because the other person deserves peace, but because you do, because your body needs it, because your future depends on it, because your healing is tied to a heart that is willing to be soft again, open again, alive again. This is not about denying what happened. It's about refusing to be defined by it. You are not your past. You are not what they did. You are not what they didn't say, didn't do, didn't give. You are more. And until you let go of what hurt you, you cannot fully grab hold of what's meant to heal you. Some people stay sick not because they lack faith, but because they haven't surrendered the bitterness still rooted beneath their faith. They pray for healing, but that their heart is still clenched, still guarded, still holding something it was never meant to carry. And healing cannot flow through a heart closed by resentment. You have the power to change that right now. You have the power to release, to forgive, to let go. You have the power to breathe again. Not because it's easy, but because it's time. Your healing is waiting on the other side of that release. Don't delay it any longer. Don't stay stuck in pain that doesn't belong to your future. Open your heart, forgive, and watch how your healing begins. What you speak over your life is shaping your life. Every word you say, especially when you're under pressure, becomes a blueprint. And your body, your mind, your spirit, they follow that blueprint. You may not even realize it, but what you say repeatedly becomes what you believe. And what you believe becomes what you experience. You can pray for healing. But if you're constantly talking about sickness, you're reinforcing the very thing you're trying to escape. You're giving it a home in your identity. Words are not just sounds. They are signals. They tell your nervous system what to expect. They send messages to your brain, to your cells, to your future. When you say, my condition, my pain, my illness, you are not just describing reality, you are claiming ownership of it. And what you own, you keep. This is why shifting your language is not optional, it's essential. Because your words either align with healing or they resist it. If you speak weakness, you reinforce limitation. If you speak fear, you empower it. But if you speak life, even when it hurts, you begin to change your internal chemistry. You interrupt the pattern. You invite something greater to take over. That's not denial. That's deliberate faith in motion. Because your body doesn't just respond to treatment. It responds to truth. And truth must be spoken again and again until it rewrites the story you've been telling yourself. Speak health, not just in prayer, but in your everyday conversations. Speak strength, not just when you're encouraged, but especially when you feel weak. Because every time you speak wholeness, you create space for healing to move. You are teaching your body what to believe. You are training your mind to expect something new. And your expectations create your emotional atmosphere. This is where many people get stuck. They believe in healing, but they speak as if it's out of reach. They pray for breakthrough, then immediately talk about the struggle. And without realizing it, they are building walls with their words. Walls that faith must climb over again and again. You were not created to live in contradiction. Your healing flows best when your language matches your belief. Change your confession not to impress anyone, but to align with the truth that sets you free. Stop claiming what you want to leave. Stop rehearsing what you want God to reverse. Speak what aligns with your healing. Declare what supports your restoration. And do it consistently, not emotionally. Because power isn't just in passion, it's in persistence. Your words are creating momentum. They are either moving you forward or holding you back. Choose life with your language. Choose faith with your vocabulary. Choose healing with every sentence you speak. Your voice is a tool. Use it to build what you've been praying for. Don't wait to feel better to speak better. Speak better now, because healing doesn't only come when symptoms leave. It begins the moment your words agree with your breakthrough. Your words create the environment, but your habits determine what grows in it. You can speak healing every day, but if your actions are working against your prayers, you're planting seeds in poisoned soil. Faith is not just what you say. It's what you do when no one's watching. It's not only in the declarations you make, but in the daily decisions you repeat. Because real transformation is not sustained by moments of inspiration. It's built through patterns of alignment. You can't pray for strength and then keep burning yourself out. You can't ask for healing while neglecting the body that's crying out for rest, for nourishment, for care. You can't hope for breakthrough and keep running back to the very habits that keep you stuck. There is no shame in this, only awareness. And with awareness comes power, the power to shift, the power to choose again, the power to align your faith with your follow through. You were not created to live in cycles of survival. You were made for wholeness. And wholeness is not just about spiritual faith. It's about physical stewardship. It's how you treat your body. What you feed it, how you let it rest, how you protect your peace, how you say no when your soul is crying for margin. Some people stay sick not because they lack belief, but because their lifestyle is breaking down what their prayers are trying to build. This isn't about perfection. It's about partnership. You do your part and heaven responds. But your part matters. Your part is sacred. What you allow into your mind, your routine, your space, it all contributes to your healing or your delay. Sometimes the miracle is waiting on the moment you start treating your body like it's already being healed, not just hoping for it to happen someday. Faith without works is not just ineffective, it's exhausting, because you keep asking but never aligning. You keep hoping but never shifting. And the breakthrough feels distant, not because it's being withheld, but because it's being resisted, not intentionally, quietly, through choices made in the dark, through habits that feel small but speak loud. You have the power to change that, to begin again, to match your habits to your hope. You don't need to be extreme. You need to be intentional. Give your body rest. Feed it with wisdom. Move it with purpose. Guard your mind. Protect your energy. Stop waiting for healing to show up before you live like it's possible, live like it's on the way, because it is. Let your actions become proof of your faith. Let your daily choices say what your prayers already declared. You are not powerless. You are not stuck. You are one decision away from stepping into alignment. And alignment is where healing flows. You've done what you can. You've spoken the words, shifted your habits, searched your heart, aligned your thoughts, and still it feels like nothing is changing. The pain hasn't left. The symptoms persist. The silence from heaven feels deafening. And this is where many give up, not because they lack faith, but because they don't understand the role of timing. Healing doesn't always arrive on our schedule. It comes in divine order, not human urgency. And sometimes the waiting is not punishment, it's preparation. Delay does not mean denial. Just because the answer hasn't come yet doesn't mean it's not coming. But in the waiting, your faith is being refined. Your trust is being tested, not to break you, but to build something unshakable within you. Because healing is not just about what changes in your body, it's about what's being formed in your soul. Patience, endurance, deeper dependence, the kind of faith that doesn't waver when circumstances do, the kind that doesn't need immediate results to keep believing. This is where trust becomes more than a word. It becomes a posture, a decision, to believe that something is happening even when you can't see it, to believe that your prayers are still echoing, still moving things, still shifting atmospheres, to believe that healing is working its way through layers you didn't even know were wounded. Sometimes the body takes longer because the soul needed healing first. Sometimes the process is stretched, not because you're being overlooked, but because you're being completed. There is a strength built in the waiting that cannot be forged any other way. When you trust without proof, when you believe without confirmation, when you hold on to hope without a timeline, that's not weakness. That's maturity. That's growth. And often that inner healing becomes the very foundation your physical healing stands on. You are not forgotten. You are not being ignored. You are being shaped for something greater than relief. You are being prepared for restoration, complete, deep, lasting restoration. And when it comes, it won't just heal your body. It will renew your spirit, rebuild your strength, and redefine your faith. Keep going, not because it's easy, but because you're closer than you think. Keep speaking life. Keep guarding your heart. Keep aligning your habits. Keep releasing the past. Keep trusting even when your emotions don't feel it. Because faith is not about what you feel. It's about what you choose. And if you choose to believe through the silence, you'll come out stronger than you ever imagined. Your healing is on the way. Not because you forced it, but because you stayed faithful. And that kind of faith moves mountains, not just outside of you, but within you. Don't let delay convince you to give up. Let it deepen your roots. Because what's growing underground is just as real as what you've been waiting to see. And when it breaks through, it will be worth every moment you held on. There comes a moment when you stop asking why and start declaring who you are, not based on what you feel, not based on what you see, but based on what's already been spoken over your life. because healing doesn't begin when the symptoms disappear. It begins when your identity shifts. When you stop seeing yourself as the sick trying to get well and start standing as the healed walking through recovery. There's a difference. One is rooted in striving. The other is anchored in knowing. You were never meant to live beneath your circumstances. You were never created to spend your life begging for what's already been made available to you. Healing is not something you chase. It's something you align with. And that alignment begins with identity, not the labels others gave you, not the diagnosis, not the story that's followed you for years, but the truth of who you really are, whole, chosen, set apart, loved beyond comprehension, and designed for victory. Every lie that told you healing wasn't for you must be confronted. Every fear that whispered you weren't worthy has to be silenced. Because as long as you see yourself as broken, you will struggle to believe in restoration. As long as you see yourself through the lens of your struggle, you will question your right to be free. But freedom is not something you earn. It's something you step into. And the first step is deciding to believe what's true, even when everything around you contradicts it. You are not your pain. You are not your past. You are not what happened to you. You are not what the reports say. You are not your symptoms. You are not your struggle. You are more. You are stronger than what's tried to break you. You are bigger than what's tried to bury you. And if you can hold on to that truth, if you can anchor yourself in who you are, not just what you're feeling, you will walk through seasons others couldn't survive. Real healing begins when you stop waiting to feel worthy of it. You already are. Not because of what you've done, but because of who you belong to. The battle has never been about your condition. It's always been about your identity. The moment you realize that is the moment things begin to shift, not just around you, but within you. So stop rehearsing defeat. Stop repeating the script of limitation. Start speaking like someone who's already free. Start thinking like someone who's already restored. Walk like someone who knows they're on their way out of the storm. Talk like someone who knows healing is not just coming, but has already started. This is more than hope. This is truth. And when truth becomes your foundation, nothing can shake you. You've come too far to turn back. You've grown too strong to stay stuck. Stand up in who you are. Speak from it. Live from it. And healing will meet you there. If the enemy can't steal your body, he'll try to steal your belief. He'll whisper that nothing is changing, that your prayers are empty, that your faith is weak. He'll point to the pain, the delays, the setbacks, and try to convince you that healing isn't for you. But that voice is a liar. It always has been. Because it knows the moment you stop agreeing with defeat and start standing in truth, everything begins to shift. Healing starts in your spirit long before it's visible in your body. And the fight now is not just against sickness. It's for your agreement. Agreement is power. Whatever you agree with shapes your perspective, influences your emotions, and directs your choices. When you agree with fear, you shrink. When you agree with lies, you settle. But when you agree with truth, real truth, your entire atmosphere begins to change. The same body, the same circumstances, the same environment can hold different outcomes simply because your agreement changed. You're not waiting for a miracle. You're partnering with one right now in your thoughts, your words, your focus, your choices. The shift happens the moment you stop aligning with what you see and start aligning with what you know. You know you're not alone. You know your healing was never impossible. You know you were made for more than just surviving the pain. You were made to overcome it. You know your prayers have power not because of how loud they are, but because of the one who hears them. And you know deep down, even in the silence, that something is changing, even if it's unseen, even if it's slow, even if it's uncomfortable. This is where healing takes root, in your agreement with what is true, not just what is visible. Because visible evidence can lie. Pain can scream louder than progress. Symptoms can speak louder than faith. But none of those things define what's really happening beneath the surface. They don't see the spiritual realignment. They don't feel the chains that have already been breaking. They don't sense the breakthrough forming beneath the pressure. So hold the line. Anchor your agreement in truth, not in how long it's taking. Don't let fatigue change your confession. Don't let discouragement write your future. Stand in what you've already been given. The right to be healed. The authority to speak life. The power to overcome. You don't need permission to believe anymore. You already have it. You don't need another sign. You've already received the promise. The question now isn't whether healing is possible. The question is whether you'll keep agreeing with it even in the dark. Because what you agree with consistently, you begin to manifest. Healing isn't just what happens to you. It's what rises within you. And when your agreement lines up with your destiny, nothing can stop the breakthrough that's already begun. Stay aligned. Stay expectant. Stay grounded in truth. Your healing is already in motion. Have you ever reached a point where your prayers felt more like desperate cries than confident conversations with God? That place where you ask and ask, but nothing changes, and every time you open your mouth, it feels like you're just repeating the same words into an empty sky. I've been there too many times. I was asking for healing, for peace, for answers. I was pleading for something to shift. I thought that if I just asked enough, prayed hard enough, fasted long enough, maybe God would finally move. Maybe he'd hear me. Maybe I'd finally be free. But the more I asked, the heavier I felt. I wasn't growing stronger. I was growing more tired. There's a kind of weariness that doesn't come from the body. It comes from the soul. It's the fatigue of waiting, of hoping, of crying out and hearing silence in return. You wonder if your faith is broken, if maybe you did something wrong, if maybe God is holding out on you. I asked so many questions. Why isn't it happening? What am I missing? Why does it work for others but not for me? The questions didn't lead me to clarity. They led me deeper into confusion. I started focusing more on the pain than the one who could heal it. I was magnifying the problem, not the solution. And the truth hit me like a whisper. I was asking out of fear, not faith. My words weren't rooted in trust. They were rooted in panic. I didn't even realize it at the time, but I was more focused on what wasn't happening than on who God is. I had unknowingly made the mountain my obsession. I talked about it, cried about it, begged about it. I was feeding the very thing I wanted to be free from. But something shifted, not because I found better words or a deeper theology. It shifted when I ran out of strength, when I had nothing left to say, when I stopped trying to get God's attention and simply sat in his presence. I didn't come to ask for anything that day. I came because I had nowhere else to go. And in that quiet place, something holy happened. I stopped asking and I started worshiping. Worship changed everything. Not instantly, not dramatically, but deeply. It pulled me out of fear and into faith. It realigned my focus. It brought peace back into my storm. And that's why you need to stay with me until the end. Because if you've been begging, striving, and still stuck, there's another way, a better way, a way that leads to healing not just in your body, but in your soul. You don't need more effort. You need more alignment. And it begins when you stop asking and start worshiping. There is a silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels sacred. That's where I found myself. No more pleading, no more striving, just stillness. I wasn't trying to impress God with perfect words. I wasn't chasing a breakthrough. I was just there present, broken, but open. For the first time, I wasn't asking him to fix me. I was simply acknowledging who he is. And in that moment, something began to shift inside me, not with noise, not with drama, but with peace, a deep, settling peace that didn't come from answers. It came from surrender. We spend so much of our lives trying to control outcomes, trying to make healing happen, trying to force progress. But real power doesn't come from control. It comes from trust. And trust isn't loud. It doesn't beg. It doesn't perform. It simply rests. That day I stopped seeing God as someone I needed to convince, and I started seeing him as someone I could trust completely. I stopped approaching him like a transaction. I began to worship him like he was enough, because he is. Worship isn't a reaction to everything going right. It's a decision to believe that even in the chaos, God is still good. And when you worship in the middle of your unanswered prayers, something incredible happens. Your spirit starts to heal before your body ever does. That's because worship realigns your heart. It takes your eyes off what's missing and places them on what's eternal. You stop obsessing over what hasn't changed and start resting in the one who never does. There's power in that posture. When you stop needing to see the miracle before you believe, and instead you believe because of who God is, your faith deepens. It grows roots. It becomes unshakable. That kind of faith doesn't wait for circumstances to catch up. It leads them. And it's in that faith-filled space, born not from effort, but from worship, that healing begins to flow. You don't have to know how it will happen. You don't have to fix yourself. You just have to surrender. That's what worship is. It's not weakness. It's not giving up. It's handing over the weight you were never meant to carry. It's choosing to believe that God is working even when you can't see the results yet. It's trusting that He's enough even when your body, your mind, or your life feels broken. That kind of surrender sets you free. It takes you out of the prison of waiting and into the presence of peace. You stop being ruled by fear. You stop being tormented by timelines. You rise above your circumstances because your spirit is anchored in truth. And in that anchoring, healing begins slowly, quietly, deeply. Because where striving ends, grace begins. Where asking stops, worship starts. And that's the moment heaven draws near, not because you demanded it, but because your heart finally made room for it. Keep holding on to that. Something powerful is already happening inside you. Healing begins the moment you stop tying your faith to your feelings. It begins when you stop needing proof to believe and start choosing belief as your foundation. Worship brings you into that space. It lifts your eyes from your wounds and fixes them on the one who never changes. That shift alone carries more power than you realize, because worship doesn't ask for evidence. It declares truth in spite of it. When you speak truth in the face of pain, the atmosphere within you begins to change. Fear loosens its grip. Anxiety loses its voice. Doubt starts to dissolve. What you focus on, you empower. And for so long, your focus may have been chained to the symptoms, the delay, the unanswered questions. But worship redirects your attention. It breaks the cycle of waiting for something to change before you feel peace. It gives you peace now, in this moment, in the middle of it all, not because everything is fixed, but because your eyes are finally fixed on the right thing. You stop measuring God by your pain, and you start measuring your pain by God's presence. That one decision changes everything. There is a quiet kind of healing that moves from the inside out. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't always happen with lightning or thunder, but it's no less real. It starts in your thinking, in your breathing, in the way you see the world around you. Suddenly, you're not constantly scanning your body for signs of relief. You're not rehearsing worst-case scenarios. You're not waking up wondering if today will be the day you finally feel whole, because you already do, deep inside. And that inner wholeness becomes the soil where outer healing begins to grow. When you worship, you're not pretending everything is okay. You're declaring that even if it's not, God is still worthy. That kind of faith is raw. It's pure. And it releases something powerful into your life. Not because worship is a formula, but because it's alignment. It brings your spirit into agreement with what heaven already knows. You are seen, you are loved, and healing has already been set in motion. You don't have to chase it. You don't have to earn it. You simply stay in that place of surrender, of stillness, of worship, and let healing come to you. Let it rise slowly. Let it flow through you. Let it rebuild what fear tried to destroy. This is not about denying the pain. It's about refusing to let it define you anymore. Worship changes the conversation. It says, I'm not begging for change. I'm becoming it. You are not waiting for healing. You are walking in it. Every breath of praise, every whisper of trust, every moment you choose to lift your eyes, those are steps toward freedom. Keep walking. Keep worshiping. Healing is not a far-off dream. It's already within you, awakening. Healing doesn't always begin with a miracle. Sometimes it begins with a decision, a quiet, resolute choice to believe. Even when nothing around you confirms it, worship gives you the strength to make that choice. It builds endurance where there used to be exhaustion. It creates clarity where confusion once ruled. The more you worship, the less you chase outcomes. You stop demanding that the healing come your way in a specific form at a specific time. You start trusting that whatever comes, it will be good because it's coming from a good God. When you worship instead of worry, you're training your heart to let go of control. That surrender becomes the doorway to restoration. You begin to see that healing is not just the absence of pain. It's the presence of peace. It's the unshakable calm that holds you steady even while the storm still rages outside. And sometimes that's the greatest miracle of all. Not that the situation changed, but that you did. Peace isn't passive. It's powerful. It's what allows you to rise, to keep going, to speak life into yourself when everything else tries to shut you down. And that peace is born from worship. From that sacred moment when you stop obsessing over results and start honoring the presence of the one who holds the results in his hands. The shift is small, but the impact is massive. You begin to speak differently, think differently, carry yourself with quiet confidence, not because everything is perfect, but because you've learned to trust the process. That trust creates space for healing to unfold in ways you didn't expect. It may not be overnight. It may not be dramatic. But it's real, it's steady, it's lasting. Because healing that comes through worship isn't surface level. It doesn't just mask symptoms. It gets to the root. It heals the fear, the doubt, the wariness that was hiding underneath the physical pain. It touches the part of you that even words can't reach. That's why it matters. That's why worship is more than a song. It's a strategy, a lifestyle, a lifeline. When you choose to worship instead of worry, praise instead of panic, you begin to live from a place of victory, not victimhood. You stop measuring your worth by your weakness. You stop letting the pain speak louder than your purpose. And you start moving forward, not in your own strength, but in the overflow of his. That's where healing finds you. Not because you fought harder, but because you finally let go. You surrendered the timeline. You stopped begging for the outcome. You opened your heart and allowed worship to do what asking never could. Keep your heart in that place. Stay rooted in trust. Healing is not behind you. It's not far ahead. It's here. In this breath. In this moment. In your surrender. And if you keep worshiping through the waiting, you won't just witness a miracle. You'll become one. The most powerful faith doesn't shout. It stands. Quiet. Unshaken. Rooted in something deeper than results. That kind of faith is born in worship. Not the kind of worship that waits for everything to be perfect, but the kind that rises up when nothing makes sense. That kind that chooses to believe, not because it's easy, but because giving up isn't an option anymore. There comes a point where you stop treating faith like a transaction and start living it as a lifestyle. You stop negotiating with your breakthrough and start declaring your trust. That's when things start to change. You were never meant to chase healing like it's running from you. You were meant to walk in authority, knowing that healing is your inheritance, not a prize for good behavior. But that authority isn't found in more asking. It's found in alignment, in resting, in knowing. When you worship, you remind your spirit that what God said is still true, even when your body says otherwise. You begin to silence the inner critic that demands to know when, how, and why. And in that silence, faith speaks louder than fear ever could. Faith isn't a feeling. It's a decision. One that must be made daily, especially when your circumstances don't seem to agree. But worship fuels that decision. It lifts your eyes above what you see and anchors you in what you know. You begin to walk through the storm differently, not because it's easier, but because you're stronger. Worship doesn't remove the battle. It equips you to win it. There's a holy power in choosing to trust without needing to understand. That's what real faith looks like. It's not about pretending the pain doesn't exist. It's about refusing to let it define your truth. Worship pulls you into that truth again and again until it becomes your new default. You stop waking up wondering if you'll make it. You start waking up knowing you already have, because faith isn't just a path to healing. It is the healing. You are not behind. You are not broken beyond repair. You are being rebuilt from the inside out. Every time you choose worship over worry, trust over tension, peace over panic, you grow. You heal. You rise. Even when nothing on the surface looks different, something inside you is being made new. That kind of transformation cannot be faked. It cannot be forced. It must be allowed. And worship is the door that opens it wide. Let that door stay open. Keep choosing the posture that doesn't strive but surrenders. The posture that says, I trust you even now. That trust is your strength. That surrender is your weapon. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to prove it. You just have to live it. Healing is not something you wait for anymore. It's something you walk in, quiet, bold, certain. Worship is how you keep walking, even when the road is invisible. You're not powerless. Even in your lowest moment, you still have a weapon. Worship is that weapon, not the kind that makes noise on the outside, but the kind that breaks chains on the inside, the kind that lifts you when nothing else can. You don't need to understand everything to worship. You just need to believe that your praise carries weight even in the dark, especially in the dark, because the enemy wants your silence. He wants your voice buried under fear. But every time you lift your heart in worship, even with trembling hands, you take back territory. You were never called to live defeated. You were created to overcome. But overcoming doesn't always look like shouting from mountaintops. Sometimes it looks like praising with tears in your eyes. Sometimes it looks like whispering truth to yourself in the middle of the night when anxiety tries to steal your breath. Sometimes it looks like saying, "Thank you," when everything inside you wants to complain. That's what real strength looks like. It's not loud. It's consistent. Worship stabilizes your spirit when your world feels unstable. It roots you. It keeps you from spiraling into doubt. It gives you language when your pain tries to make you mute. Even when your situation hasn't changed, worship begins to shift the atmosphere within you. And that shift is the beginning of breakthrough. Not because you earned it, but because you aligned with it. You stepped out of panic and into presence. And when you stay there, everything else begins to fall into place, not by force, but by faith. There is no situation that worship cannot reach. No darkness too thick. No weight too heavy, because worship doesn't come from your strength. It draws from His. That's why you're still standing. That's why your story isn't over. That's why you're hearing these words right now, because somewhere inside your spirit is still fighting to believe, still reaching for hope, still choosing to rise when everything tells you to fold. That's power. That's faith. That's worship. And if you feel weak, if you feel tired, if you feel like you have nothing left to give, start there. Start with that. Offer it. Not perfectly. Not beautifully. Just honestly. Your worship is not measured by how strong you sound. It's measured by how surrendered you are. Give what you have, even if it's just a whisper. Even if it's just a moment of stillness with your eyes closed, saying, "I trust you." That is enough. More than enough. Worship isn't the last resort. It's the first move, the highest choice, the clearest path. Keep walking in it. Keep leaning into it. Not because your pain is small, but because your God is bigger. You've made it this far. Not just by surviving, but by worshiping. So don't stop now. Every praise is progress. Every breath of faith is breakthrough in motion. And healing will not be denied to a heart that refuses to give up. This is the moment everything begins to shift. Not because your circumstances change instantly, but because you do. You've reached a turning point. Not a pressure, but a posture. You're no longer begging for breakthrough. You're becoming it. You're no longer hoping healing will find you. You're aligning your life to walk in it. That alignment doesn't start with answers. It starts with worship. It starts with honoring the one who never left, even when the silence was loud, even when the waiting felt endless, even when nothing made sense and you had every reason to doubt. You stayed. You kept your eyes up. That alone is a miracle. Now is not the time to retreat. Now is the time to rise. Because when worship becomes your default response, healing becomes your natural outcome. You're not striving anymore. You're standing not on shifting feelings, but on unshakable truth. You're walking by faith, not blind faith, but bold faith. The kind of faith that says, even if I feel nothing, even if I see nothing, I will still worship because I know who He is. That kind of resolve changes everything. It rewrites your identity. You're not a victim waiting for a miracle. You're a vessel carrying one. Every time you choose worship, you're saying no to fear. You're saying no to shame. You're refusing to let your past dictate your future. You're telling your pain, you don't get the final word. And that declaration echoes in the unseen. It plants seeds in your future. It establishes a new normal. One rooted not in anxiety, but in assurance. One that doesn't chase temporary relief, but stands in eternal truth. This is not emotional hype. This is a holy shift. You're no longer waiting for the atmosphere to change. You are the atmosphere. Your praise breaks chains. Your surrender disarms fear. Your faith disrupts patterns that try to keep you stuck. And this isn't about pretending to be strong. This is about finally realizing that strength was never something you had to manufacture. It was something you were born to carry. Worship reveals that. It reminds you that you're not powerless. You're not abandoned. You are backed by something greater than what's been against you. So take a breath. Feel that quiet confidence building. That's not denial. That's discernment. That's the voice of truth rising above the noise. You're not being crushed. You're being refined. You're not being overlooked. You're being prepared. And through it all, your worship is speaking louder than your wounds, louder than your questions, louder than your waiting. This is your moment to decide who you are, not based on what you've been through, but based on what you now carry. You carry presence. You carry peace. You carry power. And when you open your mouth in worship, heaven responds. Healing follows. Not because you chased it, but because you became a resting place for it. Stay in that place, that posture, that presence. This is where everything begins. And nothing can take it from you now. You were never meant to carry the weight of healing on your own. You were never designed to fix yourself through striving effort or fear. The breakthrough was never supposed to be earned. It was meant to be received. And worship is how you receive, not with force, but with faith, not through pressure, but through presence. When you worship, you shift from performance to connection. You stop asking what you need to do and start remembering who He already is. That shift changes everything. It's not passive surrender. It's powerful agreement. You're no longer wrestling with the process. You're flowing with it. There is strength in your stillness, power in your peace, not because your storm has ended, but because you've stopped letting it define you. You are no longer the one who needs constant answers to feel safe. You've become the one who trusts without needing to understand. That's a new identity. That's a healed mind. And that healing starts showing up in the way you think, the way you respond, the way you walk into each day. You're not surviving anymore. You're stepping into dominion quietly, boldly, surely. Because when worship becomes your foundation, nothing can move you from it. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You just have to be aligned. And you are right here, right now, fully seen, fully known, fully held. There is no part of you that's been overlooked, no piece of your pain that's been missed. And when you worship, you bring all of it into the light. You let go of the masks. You stop pretending to be okay. And somehow, in that raw surrender, you find a strength you never knew you had. Not because you built it, but because it was always there. Worship just uncovered it. You're not waiting for permission to be whole. You've already been given access. What you do with that access is up to you. But when you stay in worship, you live from it. You stop reacting to fear. You start responding from truth. That's how healing lasts. It's not a one-time experience. It's a continual exchange. Your weakness for His strength, your confusion for His clarity, your pain for His presence. That exchange doesn't happen through striving. It happens through surrender. So breathe again. This is not the end of your story. This is the beginning of a new one. Not written in pain, but in peace. Not shaped by fear, but by fire, refining, purifying, empowering fire. You are no longer asking for healing like a stranger trying to earn favor. You're worshiping like a son, like a daughter, like someone who finally knows where they belong. And from that place, healing flows, not because you chased it down, but because you stopped running from who you already are. Stay there, in the presence, in the truth, in the stillness. This is what real victory feels like.
you.